thank you for joining me on ITY TV, where more than tech news is just the start. Now, today we have two special guests from global process mining leader Celonis. On my left is Professor Wil van der Aalst, the Chief Scientist at Celonis and the man who invented process mining and process intelligence more than a quarter century ago. And on my right is Pascal Kubar, the Vice President of Sales at Celonis for the entire Asia-Pacific region. Welcome to you both.
Welcome. Very good to be here.
Hi.
Wonderful. Yes. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. Now, before we get to you both, let me briefly set the scene. Celonis, which was named a leader in the Forrester Wave for process intelligence software earlier this month, August 2025, and which is the only German company in the July 2025 list of the world's 50 most valuable private companies. I saw that on your LinkedIn, Pascal. Celonis makes processes work for people, companies, and the planet, leveraging AI and a living digital twin of your business operations in a system agnostic way and without bias, giving everyone a common language for understanding and improving businesses, which, as Celonis describes, enables its customers to continuously realize significant value across the top, bottom, and green line. Now, clearly, this is truly revolutionary, and it gives the most detailed and granular insight into a company's operations and processes than ever before. And we're truly blessed to be speaking with the inventor of process mining, Professor Wil van der Aalst. So, Professor, let's start with you. What was the original problem that you set out to solve?
Yeah, so how I got into process mining was that I was a big fan of workflow management systems in the mid-90s, a long time ago. What many people do not know anymore is that at that time, and that's quite amazing, there were already 100 vendors commercially selling workflow management software. So the idea of workflow management is that you just model your processes, and after you've modeled your process, you push a button and you get a system that does what you want, right? And everybody thought that is going to be the big thing, including myself. And then after a few years, I realized it doesn't work like that. Reality is not so simple, because the problem of, let's say, traditional workflow automation is that you basically look at the happy flow and you try to support that, but that is not enough in an organization. You need to support the real process with all of its difficulties, exceptions, etc. So that's why after a couple of years, this workflow management technology doesn't work really well, I kind of completely changed my research to no longer try to force people to work in a particular way, but to find out what are people and organizations really doing. And that was a super exciting problem, because you look at the databases of information systems like SAP, Salesforce, or whatever system you're using, you extract the data, and then you create a representation of what really is going on. And then many organizations are shocked that reality is, let's say, much more difficult than what they think. And it also immediately explains why many IT projects fail, right? Because people think, okay, let's focus on the happy cases that have no problems, but that doesn't work. Right? So for example, if you look at one of our customers here, I'm now in Brisbane currently. If you look at Queensland Health and you look at their procurement process, they have 80,000 different ways of doing it, right? So that is more complicated than if people would draw a flowchart. And I realized that in the late 90s, and I decided, okay, let's try to tackle this problem. And that's how process mining got started.
Yeah, well, it just makes you realize that it would be so nice if reality could be put into a box and have a little bow put onto it, but it's obviously much more nuanced and granular. I mean, we can't even get weather prediction right because we don't have supercomputers big enough to simulate the entire planet. And you would hope that a business process is simpler and easier. But clearly, after 25 years and all the improvements of AI, I mean, we're still a long way to go. And look, we're gonna talk more about that. But yeah, I mean, what an incredible discovery, and clearly you've been very successful.
Yeah, and if you look at so you could argue okay, to describe, let's say, 80% of the cases, I don't know, 80% of the customers that flow through your system, you can typically use a very simple model to capture the 80%. But if you want to capture the remaining 20% of your patients, of your customers, of your suppliers, what you then see is that in the last 20%, you get all of this complexity. And some people will say, okay, let's forget about the last 20%. I'm happy that I'm covering 80%. But the difficulty is that all of your compliance problems, all of your bottlenecks, all of your rework is not in the 80% that runs well. You need to focus on the things that are not running well. And that is exactly what process mining is doing, unlike many other technologies that tend to focus on the mainstream rather than the cases that have difficulties.
It's putting a new spin on the
Yeah.
80-20 rule.
This
And
80/20 rule that explains exactly why you should approach it in this way. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And look, we're going to talk a lot more about this in just a moment, Professor Wil. But Pascal, I have more questions for you towards the end of this interview. And if you have comments to add to the questions I'm about to ask Professor Wil, please feel free to jump in where appropriate.
Yep.
But you've also
No
had
problem.
more than a quarter century of experience in global software sales, and you've been the chief of the APAC region for Celonis over the past year and 8 months, 20 months. So I think it would be safe to say that you've been surprised by just how incredible this opportunity is for the businesses in the region, and that you've been having the time of your life in this role, helping companies to truly transform in ways that they didn't even realize was possible. So tell us briefly about that.
Yeah, exactly, Alex. I agree. The opportunity is huge, especially in this part of the world. We are not exactly or really familiar with process intelligence yet. So there's a lot of education to do with companies, people, partners. And there is a lot to unlock because most of the time, when we start the discussion, first people they didn't know that exists, and they don't know what's possible with that kind of technology. So definitely a lot to do.
Yeah. So back to you, Professor Wil. The process mining market is expected to grow to nearly $50 billion by 2032. So at what point did you realize your academic work could transform into a multi-billion-dollar industry?
Right from the start, I thought this is very logical, right? And I still think it's super logical. And I'm surprised that not many more people have been working on it and why people were not working on this much earlier. And I'll explain you why. Any organization has processes. Any organization has data. And process mining is the only technology that systematically connects, let's say, processes with the data that is in these systems. So it's a no-brainer that it is very important. And I still remember that when we were doing this, let's say 20, 25 years ago, and I would go to organizations and I would show them, okay, this is what your process really looks like. It would often be jaw-dropping for people, right? They
Yeah.
could not believe, is this my process? That cannot be, right? And I've had this experience now over the last 25 years that organizations are so incredibly surprised if they see their own processes that has an incredible value. So as Pascal just said, I like I think process mining is these days widely applied, especially in countries like Germany, other countries in Europe, in the US, etc. So on the one hand, it is applied, but on the other hand, many people do not know about it. And I think anybody working in a larger organization responsible for processes should know about this technology. And that is, let's say, sadly not the case. So you were talking about the size of the market. I think we are just scratching the surface of what could be possible.
Yeah. I'm just scratching the corner of my eye there for a second. But I think that people always sort of underestimate the complexity of something. They sort of take it for granted. Oh, yeah, it works this way, it works that way. But then when, as you say, where you actually analyze it all and you see the detail of what's done, yeah, it blows people away. And then just as Google desktop search, for example, showed us 20 years ago that you could now search your computer with the granularity of searching the internet, so too can, and all our smartwatches and all our devices allow us to data mine our bodies and see patterns and see information in the things we took for granted. It's exactly the same for the living, breathing being that is a major, enterprise, major corporation. And this X-ray that you're giving of all the different processes. Well, I mean, finally, thank goodness, as you say, it's becoming quite understood in the West. But given the Asia Pacific, this is the century of the Asia Pacific, and they're rapidly improving. I mean, just 50 billion is probably too small of an estimate.
I hope you're right.
Now, last year at the Celosphere conference in Munich, we saw how artificial intelligence turbocharged process mining to even greater heights. But before we get there, what is the short version of how process mining has evolved over the last 25 years? Will, you must have seen quite some changes. And look, we'll talk about the future in a moment, but let's just quickly look at just this past 25 years and the advances in that time.
Yeah, so if you look at, let's say, the first 10 years, right? It was, let's say, just me and my PhDs back in Eindhoven. I now live in Germany, but at the time I was still in Eindhoven in the Netherlands. Like we were the only group in the world systematically working on this. That gave us the advantage that for many of the things that we talk about today, we were able to develop the first algorithms and show that things work. It's surprising that things like, I don't know, predicting, for example, I don't know, when a customer order will be delivered and these types of questions were exactly the questions that we were looking already at that point in time. So the first 10 years was pure research, but with lots of questions that we are still working on today. And then, let's say after a while, let's say process mining companies came into existence. So in 2011, Celonis started as a company. And then you could see, okay, suddenly there was this offering of commercial software that would make it much easier to apply these ideas that were there in research. Because if it's in a research prototype, that is exciting for an academic, but that doesn't really help people in industry. There have to be commercial tools to support that. So you could see that the next 10 years is that, let's say, tools became available. They are very mature. And if you look today, like Celonis has a market share of over 50% of the market, but it's definitely not the only tool. There are in total 50 process mining vendors active. Right, so it's a real substantial market, and because of the availability of these tools, also the applications are following now. So I think today it's fair to say that the area is very mature. The software has lots of capabilities and can support things very well. Also, if you look on the academic side, this has become like a mature academic discipline. Right, there are large conferences that just talk about the topic of process mining, and if you would go to classical business process management conferences, over half of the presentations are about process mining. So I think it's fair to say it has reached a level of maturity, and now let's say more organizations should know that it is actually available and ready to use.
Sure. Well, it's only natural that there is a sophistication and maturity to the technology, but the evolution still continues, and we'll talk about that in a second. But to both of you, and we'll start again with you, Will, but then we'll come to you, Pascal, because you have a different perception based on the customers that you see that you're introducing this to for the first time, or introducing new features that they may not be using yet. So, Professor Wil, what is the biggest misconception that people have still today in 2025 after all these advancements about process mining and process intelligence? And then we'll come to you, Pascal, after that.
Yes, I think the biggest problem is that if organizations hear about it, they think, oh, this is some kind of AI or some kind of machine learning. And that is definitely not the case. Process mining is enabling machine learning and artificial intelligence. But if you look at the core technology, the core algorithms, they are very different. They are very different from let's say, deep neural networks or any of the stuff that people typically talk about. So a misconception is we can do this with, let's say, mainstream AI,
With ChatGPT.
with ChatGPT or something like that. That is definitely not the case. And
Yeah.
if you look at many of the things where AI is very powerful, that is when it's related to natural language, when it's related to images, or it is about things automating, let's say, consumer electronics or specific tasks. But process mining is this technology that doesn't look at one task. It doesn't look at textual data. It can take that into account, but it is optimizing end-to-end processes, which is a completely different game. And I think many people are confused. They think, this is just AI. And I think it's very challenging for many organizations today in this kind of area of all kind of buzzwords that are being used, like how to distinguish that there are huge differences between what different vendors are offering. And I think most people do not know, and in that way also lose money and miss opportunities.
Yeah, well, obviously, these sorts of interviews, your Cellosphere event, the event you had in Sydney, we'll talk about a little bit later, Pascal, are ways that people can learn about this, and obviously companies benefiting from this, and case studies, and people telling other people. I mean, it's word of mouth in many ways. But Pascal, what are your thoughts on the misconceptions that you come across?
So first, I agree completely with Will. But what I was surprised myself is here in Australia, and generally in the APAC market, is sometimes when you talk about process mining or process intelligence, so there is process in it, definitely. And people doing process modeling or process mapping, and now we are starting to go a bit more in the detail, but what is different, that's more, modeling or mapping the what how a process should work, So imagine you go and you design the what it should work. Doesn't mean it's working like that, like
It's like the
Will was
workflow
saying.
example that Professor Will was saying
Exactly.
before. Yeah.
And sometimes I've been a lot of time actually when we are discussing with people, and even the process guru without a company, it's they are saying at the first stage is, yeah, I'm already doing that, I'm doing process things, but they are more most of the time doing process mapping or process modeling. When we talk about process mining, it's not about what conceptually the process should work. It's about what's really happening in real time in your business and what will help you to identify these real inefficiencies where there is millions, maybe you can't see blocked or locked here or there, and how to help you to fix the problem and capture the value. That's what is process mining about. It's also to act, not just to look. So it's different discipline. I'm not saying process modeling or mapping is useless. It's not. It has its merit, but if you want to go fast and capture value, process mining and process intelligence is definitely the way to go.
Yeah, look, I mean, a simple analogy is that for many years we had, the chest-worn heart monitors, and we had various things to check different metrics. But now we have the smartwatches and all sorts of really detailed devices that can analyze all different aspects of your body and give you, as I said before, this truly granular view into what's happening in different parts of your body. And just as we now have this for our own selves, we now have this in a very, and I'll use the words again, sophisticated and mature way for businesses. And Professor Wil, this is something that, as we said, you invented, but it's only getting better as time goes by because we just keep discovering new things. Now, as one of the only as the only German company in the world's top 50 private companies, and as an undisputed leader in process intelligence, Celonis now dominates the market, as you said, over 50%. And you've explained some of the evolution of process mining software over the last quarter century. And I guess this sort of dovetails into the previous question, but what are the top, 3 or 4 or 5 things that absolutely sets Celonis apart from its competitors, the technology? What sets you apart?
Yeah. So, like when the founder started, let's say Celonis, I think one of the things that they did different than many others was to focus on large-scale use by non-experts. I think other tools that were available before, they were focusing on a data scientist, like an expert using the tool in a project. And the thing that is done different, let's say in Celonis right from the start, is it should be consumed by many people. People that are working in these processes, responsible in these processes, they should see the result. And it is not a project, it is something that you do continuously. So if you look at, let's say, success stories of process mining, like in BMW, in Siemens, etc., there are hundreds or thousands of people consuming the results of process mining. And that's very, very important. So that's something that was different than many of the competitors. Of course, the competitors are now also doing that. I think another differentiator was very quickly to realize it's not about diagnostics, it's about actions. So connecting, if you see certain inefficiencies like rework or deviations or bottlenecks, how can you connect that to actually taking actions in the system, right? That's a differentiator. I think also a differentiator is, let's say, scalability. You would be surprised with some of the customers that we have. You're talking about billions and billions of objects and events. And from a computer science challenge, this is amazing, right? Even if you are dealing with billions of records, you want to move a slider and you want to see an instant result. And in the back, you don't realize that these are, let's say, computations that are running over incredible, let's say, data sets, right? And at any point in time, you can drill down and you can look at a particular customer or a particular supplier, right? So from an IT perspective, that is something that is amazing. And I could go on and on, but one thing that I definitely would like to mention is that Celonis is, at this point in time, the only company that completely moved from, let's say, traditional process mining, which we also call case-centric process mining, to object-centric process mining. And this is like the biggest revolution in the field. And currently, Celonis is the only one systematically supporting that. So I think that's a very important motivation. It goes too deep to explain what exactly the difference is, but you were earlier talking about an X-ray of an organization. With object-centric process mining, you can take an MRI of an organization. So you don't look at the organization from a particular angle. You collect all the data, so you get like a digital twin of this organization that you can view from any angle. And let's say our competitors are trying to catch up with us to also support something like that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, an X-ray is a snapshot, but with an MRI, if you're watching it live, and I'm actually not sure if you can, but you're basically watching a full 3D representation live as things are happening, which is...
You're watching it live,
it's a step
and you
up.
can look at it from any angle.
Yeah.
If you take an X-ray, you always have one image from a particular angle, and then you say, oh, I now do not see what disease the patient has.
Yeah.
We need to look further, and then you need to go back to your source system to extract the data.
Yeah.
With object-centric process mining, you don't have to do that because you have this three-dimensional view, and you can kind of view things from any side, also in real time.
Yeah. And I'm sure amongst all of your customers, I mean, you're talking about billions upon billions, but you must be dealing with trillions upon trillions across all of your customers. And that has to happen at scale, flawlessly, real time, and predictively. And I mean, it's a challenge. But thankfully, we have all of this technology being developed for AI, which is pushing forward the technological capabilities. So, I mean, it's the right time for all this to be happening.
Yeah. Then also, of course, we are... like in the past, process mining software would run typically, let's say, on a computer or in an organization. We are heavily leveraging, let's say, cloud infrastructures that give us basically infinite scalability, right? So like as the size of the data goes with the customer, like it automatically scales.
Yeah, as it should. Now, Professor Wil, as one of the world's most cited computer scientists and the highest ranked computer scientist in Germany, and ranked 10th worldwide with over 134,000 citations, Your ideas have influenced researchers, software developers, and standardization committees working on process support. And your academic work is obviously unparalleled. So why, and you're the perfect person to answer this question, is the academic community so critical to this field?
Yeah, so it is very so there are two reasons. The first reason is I think process mining is a very nice example of something that started in academia as a research project and then moved into, let's say, a whole industry in a way, right? So I think research is an enabler for new technologies, and typically people work on things and only 10 years later you see it in products that customers can use. So research is important. But what is also very important is education, right? So uh, managers that have taken an MBA or something like that and have taken a traditional MBA, they didn't hear about process mining. They learned about very classical techniques, and I think it's very important to embed things like process mining whenever people are studying some business studies or industrial engineering or whatever. They should hear about process mining, and that is why this connection to academia is very important. Of course, these are things that take a while, right? So if there are now people in the classroom listening to my courses on process mining, these will be the people that in 10 or 15 years will make the decisions, right? So it's very important to influence these. That's much easier than trying to convince, let's say, older males that have worked in an industry their whole life and they think, okay, I don't need to learn anything new. I just continue doing what I was always doing. And we need to have these new young generations that approach things in a more analytical, let's say, data-driven way.
I don't know if future versions of Chat GPT or Gemini are going to do this for me, but I'm listening to you and I'm thinking I need to process intelligently manage my life. I want to know what my personal process. I want to personally process mine myself. So can Celonis please work on a personal
Yes.
personal version of that for
Yeah.
consumers?
So one of the dangers that we see also in terms of education today is, let's say, with the uptake of Gen AI, it's very dangerous. People think, okay, I don't need to learn anything anymore, right? I just type a question and then some answer comes out of that.
Yeah.
I think that's very dangerous. And you should realize that ChatGPT knows nothing about your organization's processes.
Yeah.
It knows nothing about it, and you don't want it to guess or to generate pages with text. You want it to make a decision based on data, right? And that's why it's important that let's say people still learn these things. And this uptake of Gen AI has a bit of the risk that in some organizations the gap between reality, what an organization is actually doing, struggling with very basic things, and the expectations, just type in ChatGPT whatever question you have, that gap is becoming too large. And I think organizations should invest time and money to try to close that gap.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm sure that the Gen AI companies are going to try and move towards a form of process mining because it's like HBO trying to become Netflix as fast as Netflix was trying to become HBO. AI wants to be this one universal interface for everything. But yes, look, I mean, of course they want that, but there's a lot of work to be done first. The next question is to both of you as well, because Pascal, you must be working in this regard as well to create these academic business research hubs that I'm going to talk about. But to continue along the academic path that has strong alignment with business outcomes, Australia is emerging as a research hub in process mining. So to both of you, what excites you most about this? I guess beyond the fact that, hey, it's really taking off and people are really embracing it.
Yes, so I think that on the one hand, Australia is in a very good shape, let's say, seen globally, because there are US. So currently, I'm at Queensland University of Technology in Brisbane, but so here at QUT, but also at universities like, for example, the University of Melbourne, There are good researchers in terms of let's say process mining and business process management. So like there is a certain infrastructure there that can be leveraged. At the same time, many people do not, as we talked about earlier, do not know that it existed. Celonis started, let's say, less than 2 years ago here. We now have some very, let's say, interesting customers that hopefully inspire other companies to also do that. But like the opportunities here, they are they are here like in any other country, right? It can be applied to any operational process, whether it's healthcare, whether it's manufacturing, whether it's education, finance. It can be used everywhere, right? So I don't think that Australia is unique in terms of opportunities. They are kind of there in any country.
Yeah. And Pascal, are you helping to manage any of this side of the equation, or are you leaving it to
Yes.
Professor Will?
Um, And it's coming back to what Will just said and what we discussed before is I'm really happy or pleased to see that on the academic field we are pretty advanced. And Will mentioned QUT is still in Brisbane with QUT, but even other big universities quite advanced. I should confess that there is still a gap between this advanced academic, field and where we are at within the different verticals. By the way, we talk about Queensland Health, but it could be telco, retail, where it's still new. It's only started. So the good part of it is that's why I think there is even a bigger opportunity because we didn't really start, and these companies they are big, in Australia, as you know, if you think about mining sector or banking or a company like Qantas, big aviation, big retailer. There is so much to do, but we are starting. So that's where I think we are really at the beginning of the curve. And when I look at what has been achieved, so for real in Europe or in US, it make me think, and that's why I joined. Also part of the reason, because it's yeah, it's the opportunity is there, and now it's when do we grab these opportunities? That's the question.
Now, over the last decade, I've heard a lot of companies talking about digital transformation. And the reality is that humanity has been digitally transforming for decades. I mean, when we went from typewriters to dumb terminals, when we went from dumb terminals to the PC on every desk and the operating systems, we went from the PC on every desk to the smartphone in your pocket. We went from faxes to scanners to all of the different robotic process automation and everything else. I mean, it's a non-stop process of continuous improvement. And part of that now obviously has to be that process intelligence is further refining and shaping the future of digital transformation for enterprise. And that must be very exciting for both of you to see that happening. And I mean, you must be using it in your own businesses to help really advance what you're doing, and this digital transformation just continuously improving for everybody.
Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I wanted to add one thing, Alex, when I think about Australia or APAC, I'm not saying they are far behind. There is also very advanced things or domains that have been explored. But as an example, we have also some global customers. When we talk the other day, we had on stage with me people from actually the executive in charge of the transformation at Aldi. And Aldi in
I love
Australia,
Aldi. I
quite
was just there earlier today.
famous. So Aldi or even Allianz is another global customer, in insurance or others like Chevron, Exxon, Mobil, and they are in Australia. And people are from these companies, they are using Celonis process intelligence in Australia already. On top of the I would say the local company like Optus was also Queensland Health we talked about. So yeah, there is plenty already using Celonis and process intelligence in country, but there's a lot that are not yet doing that. So yeah, a lot to do.
A lot of work there. And Professor Will, what are your views on digital transformation?
Yeah, so it's a bit what I said earlier. I think there are huge opportunities. I'm just a bit concerned about the gap between what people talk about and what they actually do. I think it's sometimes a bit misleading if we look on our mobile phone and we think things are going very advanced, and then you go into organizations that have major problems with relatively basic processes. I don't know, procurement, for example, where there are lots of inefficiencies. And if you then start looking, you still find, I don't know, not fax machines anymore, but still, I don't know, things related to paper or data quality problems where there are different systems that do not are not well connected to each other. And so I really urge organizations to first crawl, then walk, and then run. Don't
Yeah.
start to run if you have never crawled before. And I think organizations need to be digitally fit. And to do that, you need to make sure that the basic infrastructure is good.
Yeah.
And when you do process mining, you often see that organizations are still struggling with some of the basics. And they need to address that first in order to have a successful AI strategy.
And to both of you, I mean, you're talking about companies need to, crawl before they walk and they run. So, what is the typical onboarding process for a company that comes to you and has heard about process mining and wants to implement it? How can you help a company to quickly realize whether process intelligence is right for them? What is the model around delivering that outcome, which, if successful, would lead into a full-blown relationship should the synergies and benefits be clearly in sync?
Yeah. So if I start and then perhaps Pascal can go
Sure.
into more detail. I think it typically starts with the short proof of value project, right? So the goal is in a very short time that the company that has an interest in process mining that to concretely do it, to not talk for a very long time about contractual issues, etc., but to simply do it on let's say real data and then extrapolate, let's say, and then show this is the value that can be realized. And after this first step, then the company needs to make an investment. Okay, we are now really going to do it seriously. As I said, process mining is not a project, it's something that you do continuously every day, right? So you need to invest in that, in people, in software, in an infrastructure to do that. But it starts with showing the value, right? And then it starts with the phase where you realize the value. What I find very important is that you get most out of process mining if you are able to scale, right? So it's a generic technology. You can apply it on, let's say, on your sales side. You can apply it on your production side, in logistics, etc., etc. So you can apply it everywhere. So make sure that the organization can scale, because then the benefits will be the largest. And for that, it's very important that, let's say, C-level is fully supporting this. So process mining as a bottom-up initiative typically doesn't work very well, right? You need to start with a concrete process, but an organization needs to be willing, okay, we really want to be an organization where processes run well. And this requires, let's say, support of higher level management because it means that you're going to uncover things that are not so nice. That compliance issues, performance issues, that shows that there is a lot of value, but also that it can be a painful process. And that's why it's important to make sure that in a political sense, this is also running well. But I'm
Yeah.
sure Pascal can tell much more
Well,
about
but
this.
Yeah.
before you just jump in there, I mean, there must be fraud and waste that's discovered as well, which probably governments, for example, don't want their things to be process mined because we discovered that. But also, as with many things in life, it has to be leadership driven because
Yeah.
it gives them so much visibility that they were lacking. But Pascal, over to you.
Yeah, I fully agree with Will. And what I realize now, yeah, nearly 18 months in the job is most of the people we have been dealing with or we have been presenting, they are clever, they got it. And even if they didn't know about this technology exist before, they got it. You show a demo in 10 minutes, Usually people, they are already thinking about where they can apply or they can apply.
Mm.
The key is how to get them to act because most of these key people, C-level, even people doing in finance, in supply chain, in procurement, they are super busy. They are
Yeah.
super busy. They have to do more with less kind of things. So usually they say, "Oh yeah, I can see it, but let's catch up in 3 months, or let's catch up and they go back to what they have been doing, and that's a bit the cartoon I really love from Will, where you can see these guys pushing a cart with square wheel, and they're saying, no, no, I'm super busy. And you have this nice lady with circular wheel, process mining wheel, ready to help. And the guy say, no, come back in 6 months.
Yeah.
And that's real. And I feel for people also because I understand when you are already under the pump, why you will go after a new technology, even if, when your IT people are saying, no, we are consolidating, we don't want new stuff, we want to, less. And that's where a POV, so a proof of value, really comes in. And it's and many times, because so first when we talk about a proof of value, typically it's 4 weeks. So it's 4 weeks. It's we'll try to focus on two or three, no more than that, use cases. So one process, two or three high impact use cases we select with the customer where it hurts, where they know, here we should do better, or there is a lot at stake. And it's what is super important. It's no more than roughly 20, depending on the scope, but 20 hours of your time, of people's time, from your team. So that mean if you can find a way to invest, yeah, we need you anyway, but 20 hours, but not weeks, not months, not another
Hours.
big program,
Yeah.
20 hours of your team altogether in 4 weeks will not only give you a good flavor of how Celonis can help you in your environment, but more important, you will go away with a good view of how much value so we will help you to quantify the value you can capture if you go after this specific area of your business. And we usually start with, will not boil the ocean. We'll start with one aspect, so procurement, account payables, or supply chain, and a specific case. And that will build the business case, because based on your data, so it's not a PowerPoint, it's based on your data. In 4 weeks, you will build the case. And then you can go back internally and go after maybe the budget you didn't have ready to go for process intelligence.
Yeah.
But if you have a case, and that was we were talking about Queensland Health before, when you can come back really backed with a business case based on your data where there is tens of millions you could capture, then sometimes the conversation change.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know, so
it's
that's
not an
that's
addition of
really
value; it's a multiplication of value.
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
And Professor Wil, despite so much growth for process mining and process intelligence, fueled even further by AI, which we saw the beginnings of at Celonis last year, what areas still need innovation and deeper exploration?
Yeah, so if you look currently at the limitations, like what are the bottlenecks to apply process mining, then it's like, do people know about it? Uh, I think another important thing is if confronted with evidence that certain things need to be improved, will organizations actually do that, right? So you see issues there.
Mm.
And I think another area is, let's say, making the data extraction, let's say, easier, right? And as I said, many organizations have difficulties with let's say, the IT
Vendor locking or something?
landscape
Yeah.
to get data out of systems.
Yeah.
And so also many organizations would say, okay, yeah, still large parts of our processes we do not have any data about this, right? Like the data side, these are the practical challenges that are there. I would argue that the process mining technology is not a limiting factor in doing this.
Yeah.
At the same time, if you look at the innovations that we are working on, right? We are working on very exciting crossovers between, let's say, AI and process mining, right? With the combination of these two things, we are able to do things that one could not imagine would be possible a few years ago. But that is typically only applicable if people have taken the first step. And to go back to the, let's say, earlier discussion, many organizations are always changing. There is a merger. They are moving, I don't know, to SAP HANA or some other platform. There is always a reason to say, I'm not going to do it now, right? It's the same as you would never buy a TV because next year there will be a TV that has more features, right?
Mm.
So that would mean that you would never watch TV in your entire life because you're always waiting for the next TV that is better.
Yeah.
I think that also a bit applies to process mining, and that's surprising because process mining is a very flexible technology. So if your processes are changing, you do not need to change the process mining, right? So if the processes are going from this into that, because you made changes in your infrastructure or you made changes, you merged two teams or something like that, the process mining continues to work. And I think there are many, let's say, AI or RPA solutions, et cetera, that are more like a band-aid, right?
Mm.
They work for a particular point in time, but they do not have this flexibility to, if things are changing, to automatically adapt to this.
Yeah. Now, I've got some other questions about Celosphere 2025, but recently you hosted this month Australia's first Process Intelligence Forum in Sydney, and you were there as well. You were one of the headline. Well, you were the headline guest, the star, Professor Wil. So, what was the short version of what that was like and the reception that you had from everybody that attended?
It was the atmosphere was wonderful, right? We were all also we were in the Sydney Harbour with a view on the opera, right? That
Yeah,
was on the other side, so that was quite spectacular.
wonderful.
Also, I think it was the only day in the week that it was not raining, so that was also a very nice
A
coincidence.
gift from God,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. But I think it was very inspiring. And what I always like about these events is to hear about, let's say, organizations that are already using process mining and to hear about their experiences, right? And I think that's very energizing to hear. As Pascal said on the stage, we had people from Queensland Health, we had people from Aldi, we had people from Optus there, but there were many other customers that were there. And at the same time, talking to new customers, right? I remember that I was talking to people, for example, of Qantas.
Yeah.
Why is Qantas not using process mining, right? One cannot say that Qantas has no process problems, right? Like any organization that is doing large-scale operations, there are many opportunities to improve. I also spoke with somebody from the police. That was very interesting, right? I've rarely seen applications of process mining in policing, but with our object-centric process mining, let's say, technology, that would be very interesting to also look at these use cases. So for me, it was very inspiring.
So, what are some great customer success stories that you can share? I mean, we're in Australia, so perhaps an Australian example is good, but it could be from anywhere around the world. But a real example of where a company has gone just wow. Last time we spoke about the Zespri in New Zealand, that was saving
Yeah,
millions
exactly.
of dollars. So, what's another
Yes.
more recent example that you'd like to share?
Yeah, and a good question, and it's exciting. I will start maybe with some local customers. Maybe Will can talk about some of our global customers. But going back to the PI from the Process Intelligence Forum we had in Sydney, I was on stage with not one but three customers, local customers, even global. One was Aldi,
Yeah.
Optus, and Queensland Health. And I can tell you, all the three they mentioned, it was not recorded, but some, yeah, huge value getting out of Celonis. Either Optus, that was more, they started with customer services, the way when you call Optus, or the way your ticket is managed, or the way you get to your answer and keep satisfied customer. We jump with Aldi with a bit more secretive, to be honest. So I will not say too much, but I can only say that they consider process intelligence and Celonis as one of their key assets, as a competitive advantage. And you know, like me, Aldi has been well known as a disruptor
Yeah.
in the retail industry. So I can tell you they are using a lot of Celonis and quite successful, including in Australia. I wanted to finish or maybe start with Queensland Health because they went public with what kind of tangible values they got. And as Will mentioned just before, or at the beginning of the interview, they started with procurement and account payables, and only on this part, they were on stage telling everybody that only focusing on this part and only one part of the procurement, by the way, not everything they procure. And there is a lot of things they procure, is they have been able to realize, not frame, realize, so it's real value, more than $10 million of value realized today, real impact. So that's very visible. Then they went and we stopped there. We had a nice value cake celebration in Brisbane. We did in May, so not long ago, with everybody up to the sea level. And I can tell you, everybody was really happy, and we celebrate, their success because they did really well. I just wanted to finish on two things. One, I forgot to mention on stage at the forum in Sydney is that's the start of the story with Queensland Health. The second thing, they have been doing many things, but the second area of their business they are trying to optimize or improve is inventory management. And they are managing also inventory warehouse where they distribute, I would say medicine or gears or equipment to the different hospital. And we frame with that based on their data, $40 million of value to capture. This one is not captured yet. And I will finish with the patient flow because at the end of the day, Queensland Health is a specific business. But their number one priority is to how to augment and satisfy their Queenslander, the patient they are dealing with, not just being profitable. In fact, that's not, they want to be effective. But so coming back to the patient flow, of course, there is benefits they can gain in terms of productivity, efficiency of all the different people working in an hospital. But we are focusing only in the emergency department. And by using Celonis in one of their hospitals, what we frame, so it's not deployed yet, but is we could reduce the line at the emergency by 7 people. So imagine you go to the emergency, there is 7 less people in the queue. You can go faster. So
Yeah.
then maybe you save life. You just not save money. So
Absolutely.
it's really inspiring, I
Yeah,
guess.
I can see why you're excited. And Professor Will, a couple of examples from you.
Yeah, so if you look at like there are thousands of let's say use cases, and what you typically see is that the organization starts with the standard processes like purchase to pay and order to cash. So the sell and the buy side that
Yeah.
any organization has. And there, for me, it is surprising that often using process mining, you can get savings that are relatively easy, right? But you show the evidence and then it's finally addressed. And so, for example, you would be surprised how many organizations are paying their invoices multiple times, right? It's very stupid, and you find these things. So there's lots of value in these types of things, and you can save millions of dollars using that. But I personally get most excited if process mining is used for the core processes of an organization, right? And then I'm thinking of users that we have, like a company like BMW. So BMW's role is not to, I don't know, to send invoices, right? Or to handle payments. They produce cars, right? So I get most excited if I look at how process mining is used in the production processes in companies like BMW. you should realize that most of the Western car companies are already using process mining. Huh? I'm personally a Porsche driver. I'm very enthusiastic about the brand, and I'm also very happy that Porsche is using process mining, let's say, for their production things. Another example that we get out of this financial, let's say, type of examples would be Lufthansa. So Lufthansa is using process mining to minimize delays at airport in Munich and Frankfurt. And these, I'm super excited. An airline wants to transport people from A to B. So I'm happy if process mining is used to improve these processes. Also, Pascal was earlier talking about Queensland Health, right? It's very successful to optimize procurement. But ideally, you want it that it is used to better treat patients, right? Because that's the core process of hospital in the end.
Yeah.
These are examples that excite me. And then it's less about money, but really like optimizing the core of an organization, the things that really matter.
And from what I heard both of you saying, but especially you, Professor Wil, I mean, process mining isn't just about being able to much more easily reach the high hanging fruit and harvest it with great results. But from what you were saying, there's so much low hanging fruit that is being missed, like paying invoices multiple times. And this really lets you see all this and dramatically improve your profits, patient outcomes. I mean, it's like this invisible thing that suddenly we've got the superpower to see, and it's like, wow, so much has been missed, but no more, and that's exciting. Yeah. Now, look, would love to interview you again, Professor Wil, because in previous interviews I've asked Pascal about memories of his first computer and interesting advice that he's received in life to help him get where he is today, and we've gone on with this interview probably for too long, so I will definitely want to talk to you about that. But, aside from what's coming up at Celosphere, what is the final message from you both each to the viewers and the readers about Celonis, Process Mining and Intelligence, and Celosphere 2025?
So my advice would be stop using square wheels, right? There are round wheels. They are available. You can use it today. Make sure that you try to close the gap between expectations of AI and, let's say, the day-to-day reality. And I hope when I return in Australia, perhaps next year or so,
I hope so.
that there are many new, let's say, exciting applications of organizations that replace their square wheels with round wheels that actually run.
And any sneak peeks of Celosphere 2025 you can give us?
I think what people will see is that many things are an extrapolation of the things that we have started in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
So if you look at the trends, what we have witnessed is like closer integration with AI. We will show more about these types of things. Also, making sure that the moment that you find out inefficiencies, how to better automatically turn that into actions, right? I think these are the long trends that you see over a very long time that are happening. There is no need to look at something new, right? The opportunities are endless with the technology that we have at this point in time.
And Pascal, your final message?
Yeah, Will did summarize quite well and is inspiring as usual. So what I would say is, or maybe a question, I would say, when do you start your proof of value with Celonis? Really, when do you start? When do you give you a chance to build this business case and prove to yourself maybe to start, but to your company that yeah, it's worth not just to look at it, but to start now, because otherwise you are losing money or maybe losing customers. So it's real. So we are up for the challenge. Us and our partners also. We are not the only one pushing the process intelligence wagon, but yeah, we have many partners, local partners that can help. So it's really yeah, don't hesitate. Please engage, and we'll help you to put this compelling business case together and get started. So next year, when we'll come back, hopefully, Will, that's a teaser. When we'll come back, we not only are, contemplating what good looks like or what it could be, but you can talk about your first project. Because the goodness about the project, we didn't mention that yet, but a project beyond the proof of value, on average, a project with Celonis, it's around 12 to 16 weeks. So we are talking in weeks to get to start capturing value, to start capturing value, to start getting to this ROI. So it's pretty compelling. And then after the first, we'll talk about the second and the next, but let's get the first.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Professor Wil van der Aalst, Chief Scientist at Celonis and the inventor of process mining and process intelligence, and Pascal Coubard, Vice President of Sales for the entire Asia-Pacific region at Celonis. Thank you both so much for your time. I wish you the best of success. Enjoy the rest of your time here in Australia, Professor Wil, and I look forward to speaking with you both in the future, and best of luck with Celosphere 2025.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Alex. It was a joy to talk to you.
Likewise.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Will.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.